cinéma, le Paris. Demain je serai parti. La gare, Dakar, Bamako, Mopti, y a pas de problème, tout va bien. Aujourd'hui je me marie, j'ai confiance. Amour, Solo, Gao, l'Algérie, Tunisie, Italie, y a pas de problème. J'aime au Manhattan, fast food, Dakar, Sénégal, cinéma, le Paris. Ascenseur pour le ghetto, il est minuit à Tokyo, il est 5 heures au Mali. Quelle heure est-il au paradis? Il est minuit à Tokyo, il est 5 heures au Mali. Quelle heure est-il au paradis? C'est au Manhattan, fast food, Dakar, Sénégal, la grand-mère à l'hôpital Dantec, tout va bien, Kairek, moi ici, toi là-bas, le visa au consulat numéro 39, y'attend, à l'état civil, déjà l'an 2000, déjà 2000 ans, au Manhattan, fast food, Dakar, Sénégal, cinéma, le Paris. Cinéma, le Paris. Il est minuit à Tokyo, il est 5 heures au Mali, quelle heure est-il au paradis? Il est minuit à Tokyo, il est 5 heures au Mali, quelle heure est-il au paradis? Dakar, Bamako, Rio de Janeiro, où est le problème, où est la frontière? Entre les murs, se faufiler dans l'ascenseur, ascenseur pour le ghetto, au Manhattan, fast food, Dakar, Sénégal, cinéma, le Paris. Cinéma, le Paris.
Okay, so we are on. It seems like we don't have any connection issues, so I just bring our guest in session. Thank you everyone for showing up. This afternoon, with this conversation with Stephen Diadamo from Qoro, who will hopefully give us some insights about, educate us a bit about the state of distributed quantum computing. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the session, and feel free to be typing your questions on the chat. And after I finish my own session, my own questions, I will look at your questions, and maybe if we have time, I will put on some of those questions to Stefan. So thank you. Let me remove this so we can get started. Stephen, thank you so much for, first of all, for taking your time. And
No,
thank
thank
you
you so much for the invite.
to Dan as well. Your founder for things happening, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a great timing. It's a great platform that we can share our stories on and talk about quantum computing.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Yeah, I was struggling a bit to remove the coming soon because this new streaming platform is a new something new for me as well. Yeah, so thank you again for being here. Maybe before we start, you could give a short intro about you, and then we can then move on to some of the questions that I have. I know, for example, you started your academic work as a theoretical quantum system designer, including mathematical modeling for quantum networks, protocol development, and network layer simulation. So yeah, please go ahead.
Sounds good. So I'll start from near the beginning, I guess. Maybe when things start to get interesting, I won't talk about my childhood or something. But when I started studying, I was started in Canada. I'm originally from Canada, and I studied computer science and physics to start with. And things tend to pivot a lot because I got interested in web development and mobile apps and Android apps and all these things. I was really into software development and building applications and useful things like that. That was kind of the craze back when I started studying. And the physics was always something I was passionate about, so I was always staying in physics. But then, about halfway through my studies, I learned about quantum computing, and there I said, okay, I like physics, I like math, I like computer science, I like theory. This is the topic that brings all those things together, and now you can study mathematics while doing physics, while doing computer science, and it touches everything. And so therefore I sort of stopped with the web development. I stopped with the application development, started really focusing on how do I get my career into quantum. And so I was basically a full pivot. I stopped with all that and I looked into internships and tried to work with different people. And luckily, through my university, I could get placed in the the National University of Singapore, where this is where I learned about quantum computing and networking, because I was in the group of Stephanie Vena for about 3 months as a bachelor student. And there we worked on information theory and the protocols, the quantum. It was in the early days. This is in 2013, I think. So before the whole experimentation happening in the Netherlands now, well before that. But that's where my roots are. Like that's where I first started. I think that's where the seed was planted. Let's say. And then from there, back even nowadays, you really need to study a lot to get into quantum. I think it's there's sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But anyways, the stuff that I was working on, you need to do graduate school and get PhD. So therefore, I moved to Germany. And that's where I continued my studies. So I started in the Technical University of Munich and studied mathematics for the masters. But really, it was mathematics is something very generic. There, you can take engineering courses, physics courses, but it was always towards becoming a person who can work in quantum computing, but not in the lab. I'm no lab person. I don't know how to put these wires together and do log books and stuff. So I'm always on the theory and simulation and software. So after this, I did my master thesis in, again, information theory, looking at communications scenarios, and then stayed with the same group to do my PhD. This is the theoretical quantum system design. And to begin there, we looked at, like, the question was simple. It was, you have a quantum network, you have entanglement in the network. What do you do with it? How do you benefit from this entanglement? And this was the beginning of my PhD. And we looked at things like game theory, and then we thought, okay, we have the protocols, but we don't know if they work. We have the pen and paper analysis. What's another way to do analysis is use simulation techniques. And so we built a simulator because, oh, sorry, I forgot my son joining us. Just a moment.
Oh, it's okay. No worries.
Just a second.
Hello. Yeah, no problem.
Oh, 1 second. I'll just send them out.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Is he going to? I'm sure he will be another quantum information scientist as well.
Okay, he's a little bit upset, but it's okay. He's just turning 3 years old, so everything is
Yeah. No problem. Yeah, your journey definitely resonates a lot with in the early wave of people coming into the industry. It was heavily academic focus. So nowadays, people complain to say it's hard. It used to be harder.
now there are
The
tools.
only
There's a lot
way.
of community.
Yeah. Yeah. So this brings me to my first question, I guess, is just in the topic of distributed quantum computing, which is the topic that you and your team at Qoro are focused on. What were the early signs that convinced you that distributed quantum computing could be something a problem or something interesting that even though the industry is so early at this point, that could be worked around building a company?
Yeah, I think so. The early signs were still in my PhD days when people are talking about scaling, and there was always the roadmap of IBM and getting to 1 million qubits, and putting 1 million qubits on a single device. It's it's probably not going to happen. I imagine this is my hypothesis. I don't know. Hope I get proved wrong, but even if you have a single monolithic device, even if you have 1 million qubits on one device, what if the device breaks, right? What if you need backup devices? You need networks. You can't run an HPC center with a single device. So this is the theory behind that. You can scale quantum computing beyond what you can contain in a single fridge, and you can have a proper high performance computing center with fallbacks and resilience with multiple devices. And so that was clear. I mean, there's no doubt that this is going to happen. And now the question is, well, the main question is when. You can't start a company so early that you have no chance of selling in the duration of your runway, but you also want to be, take a risk and be there right on time so that you're the first into the market. So we actually the Qoro company Qoro started with the hypothesis that we would be a control platform to connect quantum computers with photonic-based quantum networks. And we pivoted away from that in a sense because this is the problem. It's too early for starting a company in that direction from my perspective. Of course, there's lots of hardware to develop. That's important. But if we come in as a software company, we're really building software on assumptions that will certainly not be true in 5 years. So we moved away from that, and Qoro is now looking at distributed quantum computing in the sense that there's no quantum connection between the devices. It's simply classical compute and classical networking and classical communication. And now the question arises is what do you do with that? And that's what Qoro is sitting on. So we're looking at the applications, we're looking at the orchestration, the networking features that talk about, how do you operate the system? How do you make it resilient enough for your users that they're not feeling the burn of waiting in a queue for 15 days or something, so make a good experience for the users, let the HPC providers provide good service, make it easy for them, but also bring the applications. Without an application, there's no need to integrate. And this is the basis of Qoro.
Oh no, definitely, I can see that. And in fact, before Qoro, I believe both you and Dan, you were in at Cisco, right? Were you doing quantum related research there, or was it pure like classical stuff? So my question is, the change of perspective, did you, after moving away from Cisco to going to starting your own company and maybe interacting with more of the ecosystem on your own, has anything changed a bit in terms of how you perceive the state of affair of quantum networks?
Yeah. So when I was at Cisco, I was working on quantum research. I was working primarily, like when I first started there, it was about, can you build a quantum network without quantum repeaters? And if you can, what can you do with it? So it's always application and design focused, because of course a quantum repeater is not an easy hardware manufacturing feat. So it was looking at this, and so we did look at the classical perspectives of, if you have this network, how do you integrate it with the Cisco systems and put the security protocols in place and integrate. But it was essentially, I was a research scientist there, so I was really sheltered from the commercialization aspects. As a research scientist, you're primarily writing papers, writing simulations, writing IP for this company, but you don't see the commercialization. I mean, sometimes you talk to potential users, but you never talk about money, you never talk about business. So this is a very quick change. When you start a company, you have to sell something, of course. And as a scientist, this is always, it doesn't really resonate with scientists. Money and science are disjoint. You don't talk about selling. But as a business owner, you have to think about this all the time. How do you pay your employees? It's not about capitalism. It's just about, you have to sell something to survive. You have employees. You can't do it alone.
Yeah.
You have expenses. Where does the money come from? You can't ask the investors to continuously fund you with no chance of revenue. So this is the main shift. I think you really have to think about commercialization when you branch out of enterprise research, and finding the product that will sell, asking your customers, what's your problem? How do you build a software? How do you even get them to try it? This is really, it's so much different, especially when you come from Cisco. When you talk from a Cisco perspective, you talk to your customer, we'd love to work with you. You come from the startup perspective, no response, so it's very different perspective. You have to work a lot harder to get people to work with you at a startup. But we made a lot of progress in the last 2 years. I think we're in a great position now. So all the hard work is paying off.
Yeah, no, this is a journey that definitely resonates a lot with the early stage companies, especially from founders who are used to yes when they are in a large corporate, and now they are basically starting from scratch, even though they have the big corporate logos in their profile. Yeah, and suddenly you become like. People take months to reply to your email. Yeah, I suppose from your company in Qoro, because now you seem to emphasize you have both, like obviously you have a focus on enterprise as well, but there is also this thing, especially through DV, this focus on like developers. In the context of classical distributed systems, say for example microservices, we currently developers have a lot of abstractions built for them, whether service discovery and all these abstractions that makes it much more easier to implement these systems. But in quantum, because it's so early, we have like quantum processors, which are like multimodality. We have different modalities of quantum processors. We have stuff like you have to consider like calibration dependency, and all these things. From your point of view, what abstractions, from Qoro's perspective, should developers interested in working with a distributed quantum system
I see
should worry about?
Yeah, sorry, I cut you off. We got a little bit started there with the internet, but yeah, so I see two different types of developers in quantum. It's those who are focusing on the research, and those who want to put quantum into a production-ready commercial environment. So I'll start with the researchers. The researchers need full control. If you want to write a research paper, if you need reproducible results, you need to be able to say, this is exactly step by step what happened. You can't have much black box nature. You have to be able to see what's under the hood of the software. So Divi is open source. That means all the code, all the algorithms we implement can be read and used in research. And it's abstract enough that you researchers can turn things on and off. But the things that people know how to do, we already implemented them. We know the literature can implement, has implementations that are very good for particular problems. We bring those into Divi and let the developer use it as a tool. And that still gives them full control, but they don't have to write software as much. So if you just want to understand the different techniques, how your problem can be solved with option A, option B, option C, we bring the options to the researcher and they can see everything step by step what's happening. They need to change the code, it's open for them to do so. And on the other hand, there's the commercial side of things, where it's how do I just get the best answer? I don't care how it's run. I don't care what happens underneath. I want this problem solved, and I want it in the best form I can possibly have. And that's a different type of user. That's, I think, something that will come more in the future. But enterprises, and even today, right, we don't know our compute stack down to the bit. I'm not looking at the calibration routines of my processor. I don't know the memory management, how it's working on the. But in quantum, that's today, and there's no chance that this can scale like that. We need abstraction. We need to just automate things and make decisions for the user in the best way that they can, so that they can have that experience. Here's my problem, give me the answer. If it's distributed, if it's run on a simulator, if it's run on a GPU, if it's run on a real quantum computer, if it's run across the planet, it doesn't matter to them as long as the answer is the best. But can you imagine programming that as someone who's an expert in finance or chemistry? Now I have to understand transpilation. I need to understand the trapped ion calibration routine. I need to make sure that all my code is written for a particular device, and I can't port it because the interface is different. That's not how people will quantum in the future, I believe. But nowadays you need it because it's still a big research topic. So you have to give both. That's how we see abstraction now. Give the options to turn it on and off, but also if they don't want to see it, let them have that experience too.
Yeah, no, that's is exactly the same the state of affair for any developer platform right now in Quantum. So just going back to Qoro, from what I understand, your platform as an execution, as a coordination layer, coordinating across GPUs, QPUs, simulators, and quantum processors. Uh, I guess a natural question that a developer or a curious person might ask is how does the system decide which part of an application where each part of an application should run? Is this something that you have an abstraction for that, or is that something that you have some sort of a semi-abstraction where the user still has to do something and then they maybe have an end decision to which part should run on whatever?
At the moment, I'd say we have more towards the semi-abstraction, and that's because right now users will tend to decide if they want simulation only or quantum only, and that's mostly because the people using it are doing research. So you only really go to the quantum computer when you absolutely have to, maybe for the last part of a research project. That once everything is understood in simulation, then the quantum computer is there. So we don't really make automated decisions to go to the quantum computer because it's so expensive and tends to not perform that well. But when we go to the simulators, that's where we have all of our automation. We support 12 or more different ways of running a quantum circuit in a simulation, using the state vector, using polypropagation, using tensor networks or matrix product state. And that's where the engine makes the decision. It'll look at the circuit and say, it should run in that format, and it should run on, it needs more memory or needs more CPUs because it's 25 qubits or 15 qubits. So it makes classical compute resource decisions, and then horizontal scaling. Because our platform is always designed to, the main difference from our platform is that it's not just send one circuit to us and we'll send you the result back. It's send us all of the circuits at once, and we'll make sure that we have enough compute for you that you can execute them all in parallel and get results much faster. And we'll also choose the simulation technique for you so that you get the best results as fast as possible. Of course, these are configurable things, but that's the dual experiences. We can automate it all, or users can have fine granularity in deciding. So the selection of the simulator is kind of our secret sauce, but the selection of the quantum computer is still open questions. When is a quantum computer better than classical computer? Everyone is asking that question, I guess. We don't have the answer yet either.
Yeah.
But it's clear when simulators work better.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So I guess
a known problem, a known solution.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I guess another natural follow-up would be, how much information about the underlying hardware, say, for example, stuff like, how are the qubits connected and this stuff, should, a developer, an algorithm developer should be aware of versus letting something else, using an abstraction that does that for them.
So when we use real hardware, again, it's always the same story. It's the configuration setting. So we could do all the transpilation for the user with the coupling of the qubits in mind, or they can pass us the circuits pre-transpiled in the way that they want it to be, and we pass them through and still orchestrate on the quantum hardware for them, so that they don't need to learn all the interfaces to each vendor that provides a cloud service. So it's always this the two-pronged approach. But as a developer today, I think it's important to understand what's happening. Why does the simulator look different than the real quantum computer? Why are the circuits even different before they run? Why? And that's always because of the topology of the quantum computer and the gates that it supports. So then that's still something people should know. I think it's not, if the performance was better, they can look at, close their eyes to it, but there's always going to be a little bit difference in the near, today. So it's good to know why. So understanding the hardware to some extent and why is it performing the way it is, it's a necessary piece of knowledge.
Yeah, another thing also I found it is like in terms of like a practicality. Now that we are speaking about distributed architecture, is these processors are not always available. So if you have say a system, relying on say I don't know, through 2 or 3 quantum hardware providers, and one of them is not available in these things. So, implementing something in that is very, first of all, it has to be asynchronous, right? Because, the systems are not available all the time. Everything has to be on the queue. How much consideration do you have that, and how much hassle is being for you in this type of, this thing of, these systems not being accessible all the time, not least also the pricing, because they are also very expensive, right? And the pricing are also, at least from my opinion, it's not very very transparent, very how would I say, the pricing is always a little bit a little bit confusing than what we normally use to
exactly.
using compute as a service.
And you don't know in advance how long is it going to take. So if it takes 10 minutes or 5 minutes, how do you know that when you send the circuit to the quantum computer? Could be a $1,000 bill, $10,000 bill, who knows? And it really can be 10,000. Like even by mistake, I sent something to IBM once, and it cost me like $300. It was just, sent it to the wrong backend or something, and it was anyway. But to address the beginning part, using multiple vendors, this is the core problem we solved. Is we assume that there's never, cloud is going to have multiple vendors. It's going to have multiple quantum computers online ready to be used, and it is already like that today. If you log on IBM Quantum, if you log in IQM Quantum, they have multiple quantum computers that you can access. And of course, they go down for maintenance, or the queues, spike and you don't get access. So being able to switch the device dynamically without changing the application code. This was always the vision, is the application and the execution are not in the same layer. So if you need to change the execution, it's a configuration thing, not changing your whole application to accommodate that the backend is no longer available, or the vendor went out of business or something. You spend all this time building complex applications. If they're not portable to different vendors, then you just waste time rewriting the same old applications and looking at the interfaces for each vendor, learning APIs. And whose job is that today? Is the research scientists primarily. And it distracts them from doing their job of doing research. Like learning interfaces doesn't help them develop algorithms, And so this is something that we could do. Was one of the first things we demoed, is using more than one quantum computer for a particular application, automated, separated from the application layer. So this was always the thing. And we handle that basically. We have a layer that takes the circuit as far as it can go in a common language. And then if it needs to be translated, we do it on the fly and then send it and monitor the job. And the user can say, I want to be on these quantum computers, and it'll distribute the workload across those quantum computers. And they don't have to consider the transpilation and the coupling maps, and it's just automated away.
Yeah, no, that's another reality of the industry here. But this is also, I guess, is an opportunity, right, for companies like Qoro to try to reduce the pain and maybe position yourself, once we have everything in place with a quantum network. Because the access, I think you mentioned this before, at the moment, we access these devices over classical networks, right? Quantum networks are not, largely deployed for us to be able to really leverage them in a way that we are discussing in the context of having some sort of a true distributed quantum computing system. My question is, putting on your glasses, let's say looking, I don't know really, with all these promises about, these aggressive timelines about, when we'll have a useful quantum computer. Some say in 3 years, but let me be more conservative. Let's say in 10 years. What technical or commercial milestones would demonstrate in the context of distributed quantum computing that we can have some sort of operational value out of the architecture. For instance, in terms of use cases, what sort of use cases would you see that are more suitable? Because it's similar to classical distributed systems. Not every, a lot of systems, I was giving the example of microservices, for example. A lot of companies opt to use some like a monolith system to write as a way of building their applications. But there are certain cases where having a distributed architecture helps. But from your point of view, how do you see this in terms of, when to go distributed versus, staying more of a monolith type?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be perspective changes as the roadmap goes. I think for the next, maybe like most people today are looking at monolithic systems, building one really good quantum computer that can do primarily error correction. Can you hold a quantum state stable enough to run an application? You don't need distributed systems for that. You just need to prove the hardware works. But the application perspective is actually changing already today. I can see, and even I think just yesterday I see using multiple devices, looking at fragmentation, looking at partitioning. This is classical techniques brought into programs that can run on quantum. And once you fragment a problem into pieces, you're in a perfect situation to use multiple devices. That's where Qoro already saw that 2 years ago. And we said, okay, we fragment the problem. And now what do you do with this? You can use it 2 different computers. And this is the pivot point, I think. In the next year or 2, you'll see a big pivot towards using distributed systems in a classical setting. And then 10 years from now, I don't know. Of course, my glasses are, maybe I need a prescription update. But but I can see that distributed quantum computing, connecting the quantum computers, I think there'll be something there. I don't know. I really can't say, because what's the state of the art today is they can demonstrate you can entangle 2 qubits that are not on the device and trapped ions. I don't know if they demonstrate on other platforms so far, but that's just the first drop. You know what I mean? Now you need the software, you need the application, you need the hardware, you need to make it robust. That I don't know if that's coming in the next 10 years, but I think a lot of progress will be made. I mean, it's not like people aren't trying. That's definitely not the case. How successful it will be is hard to tell, but if they can do that, I think quantum computing will scale a bit better than it is today. But on the other hand, still you need application. I think without the application, all these complex systems, it's still a bet. They're building hardware, betting that someone will find an application. And unless you have good software, I think actually this is why software is so important, is if people don't know how to write code and they're application experts, they have a finance problem that could absolutely be solved with quantum, but they have no idea how to build circuits. This is the barrier today, I think, is in that case. So unless the applications come, maybe we have a great quantum computer in 10 years. Still, it won't be practical. So it's a really two-pronged drive. The quantum computers have to be good enough that people can test. People need to build applications, but the software has to be good enough that people can build applications. So it's a bit of it just needs time. It needs to bake a bit.
Yeah, so now I'll put you on the hotspot with your vendors to ask you to put another set of glasses on in about 10, because a lot of discussion that people that's being had like openly is about there are too many modalities, well, which is good, in the early stage, but at some point, we can't have all these modalities, maybe some will disappear. Others will be, the ones that maybe will have more investments and perhaps will have more trust that they will lead us to the Holy Grail. From your point of view, looking at what you know right now, I know your partners, your hardware partners will forgive you, whatever. This is just a prediction. Which modalities you think so far? Pick 3 that you think in 10 years' time will be around, if you could think.
It's a hard question. I mean, the thing is, sometimes the best technology doesn't always win, just because it's the best doesn't mean it was sold the best. And that's also a thing to think about, is when the market is established. Like, look at IBM, they basically own quantum computing from my perspective. They do a lot. They have, everyone knows IBM is doing quantum. Everyone's used Qiskit that works in quantum. Everyone knows the name of that, and that's the strength of them. So they know how to sell quantum computing. Where the companies that are just emerging, they don't have that same awareness. So even if the technology is better, it's hard to predict because of how these big companies can just keep their keep themselves in the spotlight all the time. But anyways, I don't know. I mean, superconducting seems practical because it's fast. I mean, the operations are very quick, and therefore it can be competitive to classical computing. Where if you go to neutral atom and ion trap, the operations are slow, and therefore you have to use very few of them to get in a speed advantage. It depends really. If the algorithm is so efficient on quantum that it takes like 3 hours, even because the gates are 1 second per operation, maybe that's still faster than what a classical computer can do. But yeah, from my own personal experience, I've really only used superconducting quantum computers. I haven't used the other modalities, so I don't know the quality. But I can see, the connectivity issues arise when I use superconducting quantum computers or trapped ion based quantum computers. You can move them around and stuff, and you have more freedom in that sense. Neutral atom, I think, is picking up extremely fast. I really don't know how well they perform, but you see huge investments happening, a lot of companies coming up and competing in the space, and a lot of competition, I think, helps to develop the technology. And so, I mean, if you look at the surface right now, superconducting, trapped ion, and neutral atom are the most advanced, and then there's photonic, which I'm not sure yet. I mean, it sounds promising, there's a lot of activity there, but I just don't know. I mean, I haven't thought about it enough. Room temperature is good.
Yeah.
The speed of light is good. The fact that it can go into a fiber and stuff and come out of a fiber without having to change its modality. These are all good things. It's just about, will it work? I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know enough to say. But if I had to put a fourth one, it would be photonic, just because of, again, the amount of investment, the amount of spotlight, the most advanced one. But there's others emerging that I can't even tell you the first thing about them. I don't know what these silicon spin quantum computers, the advantages of them, disadvantage are. That's why I didn't stay in physics. So again, but in terms of product
same
and
here.
user
I didn't
experience,
study.
yeah. But the companies focusing
yeah.
on the user experience today, I think, will have an advantage if they support their users, like you see how Xanadu and IBM have a lot of community support. That's what's going to drive the technology. People will use it more. If you don't have users, you have no funding to advance your technology. So it's the companies may have a great piece of technology, they don't market it well, they'll still lose, I think.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Well, you managed to, I'm sure, you still have the good relationship with every vendor. You have said a nice thing about
I didn't say any are
all
bad.
the name
I said I
modalities.
don't know.
yeah. So my other, this is very close to us because we are interested in like privacy and security stuff. Is this is something that just came just in like as we are having this conversation. In your point of view, is it something that you are already thinking, or this is something that you might be thinking down the line? Is what happens when we have like proprietary data or algorithms that must be run through like multiple cloud backends? How do you see this thing in terms of like the appeal now that everyone seems to be like very defensive, in particular like this there's a conversation about export controls and all this type of stuff and so on, sovereignty, and he said, what's your view on this? Is it too early to start thinking about these things, and maybe we should let the science and enable collaboration, not worry about this for the next maybe 5 to 10 years until we actually get closer to it? Or is it something that we should think about?
Well, the word that came out the most to me was the sovereignty. And I think it's not too early, because like the thing I saw recently is we saw this AI, Fable came out from Anthropic, and the US government shut it down. But you can imagine what happens if they build a quantum computer in the US and it's amazing, and now no one can access it. So that's my fear, is perhaps, in the future, near future, there's a big breakthrough that no one can access but one particular country. And therefore, like having that ability to to pivot away. Maybe IBM shuts the door and no more access in the US territory, but the best quantum computers are there. That could happen. Why not? I mean, it could very well happen, and therefore thinking about how do we make sure that the rest of the world has access to the most advanced technologies. I don't think it's too early, but the thing is, the quantum computers are not. It's just about thinking about it. I think executing it is maybe can wait, but making sure that there's a plan in case something happens is important, I think. And it could give some companies an edge, maybe the fact that they're sovereign. I mean, based in Germany here, and I know some of the companies, they're building in Germany, and German-made quantum computer has a nice ring to it because of the sovereignty. Mhm. But security-wise, and I think it's always it's pretty. What I would say is, when it comes to distributed system, you can kind of, it's not entirely true, but you might get a bit of security for free, because when you break up an algorithm into pieces and you're only looking at the bare minimum quantum algorithm, it's very hard to determine what someone is running. I mean, I can look at a surface code circuit and I can tell that there's a syndrome measurement going on in there. I mean, with some help of a computer, but so there's ways to look at, know what the algorithm is by looking at the circuit. But if you can obfuscate some of it, if you have pieces fragmented, you maybe don't know the entirety of what's happening underneath the hood. So you get a little bit of security by having distributed systems, but also I think there's what's the algorithm is people running that is secret enough. A lot of it is published, so it's maybe again it's a timing thing. Is if you focus on security now, we're prepared. If we do too early and it never comes, arises, the effort is wasted. But it's a good question. I don't know.
I agree with you on this. In fact, as you put it, that's why people are experimenting with stuff like federated quantum learning, for instance, and so on. The other the other curiosity I have before I jump into the audience, this is much more closer to our community, which is this thing of education. Classical distributed systems are already, we already spoke, nowadays, we have so much abstractions, so you don't need to learn that much. But in this early stages, distributed quantum computing, what sort of do we need to train people? What sort of training that someone who wanted to, get into the thing, what sort of training that you advise them to have?
Yeah, I think there's quite a different perspective. It depends on the first thing, it depends on what layer of quantum computing they want to be into. So when it comes to applications, of course, knowing the different pieces, like what algorithms work in quantum, what can actually be done with a quantum computer from a theoretical perspective is sufficient. I think maybe a data scientist or a machine learning engineer who doesn't really need to understand the bits and the hardware and the cooling systems, and that's okay. But so applications, like what can a quantum computer do in practice, I think that's very important to know. So algorithm courses and reading the classic books from 20 years ago, that Nelson and Chung or so, like those ones. When it comes to integration and being more like an admin or something, HPC is actually quite practical right now. I think that's where quantum computers will mainly live. They'll be in high performance computing centers. And so understanding schedulers can actually pay off, if it really becomes something mainstream, because being able to manage a quantum computer, you'll have to be sitting in an HPC center and knowing that system, how things will integrate. It could be, beneficial. The mathematics is always good to know. What does a quantum computer actually do? Knowing the physics is I think in every layer you have to have a little bit of that. It's not at that stage yet where you can't understand anything about it, and then the hardware, of course, it's just a PhD worth of being in a lab. What can you do? I don't know. I mean, I didn't do it myself, but
absolutely, absolutely. Especially knowing when the mathematical thing, how that does translate into the actual execution on the hardware, because very often there is some disparity. The clean mathematical stuff is not the thing that actually runs on these messy devices, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the difference. I mean, it's so much different. It's not even close. Like, the way that
So
it has to translate to like a physical pulse. I don't know, really magnetic pulses operating qubits. Is such a big disconnect from a Hadamard gate to what actually happens on the quantum computer. It's good to know that stuff, I think, in general, but necessary, I don't know. That's probably not true.
No, absolutely. Let's see if I have any questions from the audience members, please. Let's see, do we have on Substack or on YouTube? Let's see. Somehow I'm still figuring out how to use this. Let's see. Any questions? Please feel free to post on questions. Otherwise, I will continue asking my questions. And we are almost about to come to an end anyway. So maybe I would, if there are no questions, I should ask my last question to Stephen. Last chance. Yeah. So I guess this is more for like, I guess for like newbies, people coming in. If you could look back to yourself, young self, what sort of advice would you give your, yourself back,
Good question. I mean, the first thing was learn how to learn properly. This was the thing that I had to learn the hard way. Is how do you learn something new? It's actually a skill. You can't just pick up a book and read it and assume that your brain will absorb all the material. A practice. How do you absorb knowledge? That's something that took a long time for me. I think I learned how to learn in graduate school only. I did my whole bachelor without knowing how to learn something. So it somehow was luck. But that's a really good skill to have. If you can somehow, learn the tricks to learn things faster. And another thing is always try on your own. Don't listen to what people say. Sometimes they'll be wrong and they'll be right, but you should always try and see for yourself. It's a good another thing to learn, do those things to make sure that you believe it's true, and do enough to. So I think those two things. Exercise more. Don't stop exercising. Don't eat too many donuts. I don't know. No. I mean, but health is important, of course. This is something I took for granted as a younger person. Stay up late, eat poorly, sleep not enough, and work too much.
Typical graduate life. Sleep with a book, with a book under the pillow. I have my exam tomorrow.
Hopefully it absorbs through my dreams. I don't know. And then just relax, take it easy. Life is too stressful. That's it. Try to enjoy. Mm-hmm.
No, that's thank you for that. I'm sure a lot of the especially newbies, we have quite few community members more into software leaning, who are more software leaning. So it was really great to have you here. Just before we end, I believe you are currently doing a survey on your open source toolkit, Devi. So let's see if I can share here. Maybe you can talk a bit about it. And sorry, it seems to load and disappear. Sorry for this. It should load now. And I believe you will you will have like for the community members, I'll leave this on the show notes after we put the recording available for you. Those who couldn't attend, this will be available on the show. But maybe you can tell us a bit about this survey, how important it is for you, and what perks. I know there's $1,000 compute credits. That's a great incentive.
So the idea here is we have Divi in version 13 or 0.13 now. Lots of features, and essentially, we've been working a lot individually with different people using Divi. We're trying to scale this up a bit and see what else can we do with it. What ideas can people bring? And so the idea of the UX survey is try to experience Divi, download it, and see how did it go. Use our cloud credits that we'll be providing to run things at scale. Find the limits of the applications that are available, and then we have basically a competition. If whoever submits the best free, open research submission, will get the $1,000 of credits plus more. I mean, we're not saying there's only one winner, but if it's interesting, we'll provide more credits so that the research can continue. And we're here to support. We want to build something people will use. So we're not building for ourselves in the dark. We want feedback, and we support the users in understanding what features are practical and can help with research and users learning. So this is the intention of the survey: is bring people together. Let's learn what we can do and make the platform better, and also assist in scaling up simulation so that people can do science without having HPC in their bedroom. That's it.
Yeah, no. This will be on the show, on the note after for the recording and so on. And just as a heads up for those who are online now, stay tuned for a hackathon coming up at some point. We look forward to collaborating with Qoro to try to see whether we can come up together with a hackathon for the community to unleash their creativity to see. So thank you so much for that, Stephen. I think we are almost coming to the hour. So, and I know it's you are 1 hour ahead of the UK time. So thank you so much again. It was really great to have a chat with you. Thank you for the insights, and and have a great day wherever you are, everyone.
So much. Yeah, thanks for hosting me, and I'm looking forward to the hackathon.
Yeah, me too. Okay, thank you guys. Yeah, bye for now.